Since Martinsville began its most recent discussions of reversion back in November of 2019, members of City Council have stated multiple times that reversion is a financial necessity, but there's one major problem with that.
There are some tailwinds that provides a little bit of light on this rather dark picture. The city is financially stable. I think this is a misconception in some of the media reporting. The city is not broke, and it will not be, provided that we maintain our fund balance. We cannot continue to dip into it on an annual basis. But if we maintain the roughly 10% reserve and do not dip into fund balance in our budget cycles, we can continue to do what we are currently doing indefinitely.
So according to City Attorney Eric Monday, as long as the city keeps 10% of its general fund in reserves, then there's no real reason to worry about financial collapse. That begs the question, how reliant is the city on using its fund balance? Two major financial events happen for local governments each year: passing a budget and undergoing an audit. A budget is merely a forecast of what the locality expects to spend in a given year, while an audit is a review of what was actually spent at the end of the year. As shown by this chart prepared by certified public accountant Ann Shalver, the city routinely overestimates how much of its fund balance it will need to balance this budget. So far, we've established that the city can continue as is indefinitely, and that they are not as reliant on their fund balance as they would like the public to think. Plus, there's one more thing. The city will soon have the added funds from revenue sharing agreements between the city and county on two industrial parks, Commonwealth Crossing Business Center and the Patriot Center. Once the initial investment for the parks has been paid off, the city will get 1/3 of the revenue and the county will get 2/3. In our last two videos, we discussed some of what Martinsville would be giving up if it were to revert. So if the city isn't broke and there's more revenue coming in the future, then that leaves another question.
It's taken us over 60 years to get to this point. Why is there a rush to move to reversion tonight?
From the very beginning, it appears Martinsville was dead set on reversion, without any regard to other financial solutions, such as simple consolidation of schools or jails. So, was reversion a last resort or a first option? During its November 2019 City Council meeting, Martinsville gave a presentation on reversion entitled Considering Reversion. At no point in the presentation does the city demonstrate why reversion is preferable to other financial solutions. Instead, the presentation seeks to answer how to revert, not why reversion. Moreover, the city claimed that they were forced to start the process because the county would not cooperate. Here's Channel 13 reporting on that.
Vice Mayor Chad Martin says that Henry County officials don't want to talk until the city actually decides to revert, but City Council is continuing to push for efforts to provide more of a conversation as they consider reversion.
There is only one problem with that narrative. The city didn't reach out to the county until early November, right before the first presentation. The Board of Supervisors doesn't meet until the end of the month, and once it did, the board agreed to begin talks with the city. That letter was sent the first week of December. Chairman Jim Adams proposed discussing alternatives to reversion, but when the city wrote back 2 months later, they were only interested in pursuing reversion. This letter wasn't sent until after the city had already voted to begin the reversion process back in December of 2019. Even though the city was offered alternatives that would have relieved some financial stress until the revenue sharing agreements kicked in, they were not interested in discussing those options. So, reversion was never a last resort, it was always the city's first option. Now that city residents have started to speak out against reversion, the city is attempting to prevent its residents from having a final say on the issue.
I am somewhat distraught about this. We've already spent over $800,000 for our reversion attorneys, yet now we're hiring one in addition. And I truly do not understand why our city council would fight against its own citizens' right to vote for or against reversion.
Back in 2006, Martinsville City Council adopted a resolution that would allow residents to vote on reversion should the city ever consider pursuing the action. The current city council has never explained why it has chosen to go back on that promise. It is still up in the air whether or not the referendum will take place. Even if the city is successful in disenfranchising its own voters on the specific question of reversion, it is not the only way residents can stop it if they disagree with the decision. Before reversion can take effect, City Council must take one final vote on whether or not to accept town status. This must be done within 21 days of the court order. That opens the door for city residents to stop reversion should they be opposed to it. 4 of the current members of City Council have consistently voted in favor of reversion, but the governing body may stop the process at any point before accepting town status. During that time, city residents could always contact their representatives and ask them to change their vote. If those representatives refuse, city residents may also choose new representatives who promise to vote against reversion. Whether or not city residents continue down the path of reversion is still to be seen, but hopefully with this video series, they are a little more informed on what that decision could mean for them.